Welcome to NatRevMD, a podcast where we share tips on optimizing medical billing and improving practice efficiency so you can have the business of your dreams. I'm your host, Dr. Heather Signorelli, founder of NatRevMD. Let's get started. Welcome to this week's podcast. All right, this week's podcast really came from a client who had asked some questions as she was looking to figure out how to do better with her patient AR. This is just one of the many things that we do track with our clients. We have these dashboards that we create so that they can track and trend not only the KPIs we have for billing, but also the metrics that we want to track over a 13-month view, right? Because we like to look at this month's trend, obviously, compared to last year, same month, so that we can look and understand seasonality. But one of the questions that came up when we were looking at those metrics was about patient AR, was about how she can collect more. And it brought up a good topic, right? January's coming just around the corner. And we're going to be in a situation where we're going to have deductibles that are going to be resetting. And so when those deductibles reset, obviously revenue takes a hit. January looks a lot different than December when it comes to revenue because the insurance companies are paying less and more is hitting the patient responsibility. So today we're going to talk a little bit about tips when it comes to resetting in January. We're going to talk about patients that you may not be able to collect deductibles from, specifically one of the programs around the Qualified Medicare Beneficiary program, that's QMB program, and discuss some of those strategies so that you can ensure in compliance, but then also make sure that you're maximizing revenue. So if you have ever wondered about, how you navigate all of these things, today we're going to get you those actionable tips so that you can streamline that process when it comes to collecting patient payments, but also be able to understand some nuances around maybe who you can't collect from. Again, really, really important to always be checking eligibility, always be collecting patient payments up front. This should not be a new thing, but when deductibles reset, it tends to be something that hits home if you don't have those things hardwired. So today we're going to talk a little bit about hardwiring those things. Obviously, super important to implement these proactive strategies so that you can just really have consistent revenue. That's really the goal here. So let's talk first about strategies to collect more patient payments, because again, this is something you should be doing all year long. This is something that we actually just sat down with all of our practices this past month. We are doing these practice success workshops. And with that, we really honed in on eligibility as our first topic. We're going to be talking more next month about strategies around patient AR and collecting that patient AR. But today we'll just hit a little bit of those highlights. So obviously, first and foremost, it's important to educate your patients. We do have a patient AR pamphlet that we have that you can send a request to at info@natrevmd.com. We are going to be adding it to the resource tab of our website, and our website is at natrevmd.com, so natrevmd.com. But educate your patients, right? They need to know what it means to have a deductible. What is a copay? What do all of those different things even mean? Because if they understand it, they're going to be more likely to pay it. Obviously, letting them know that their deductible is going to be resetting in January and that you're going to set very clear expectations of the fact that these are contracts they have with their insurance companies, right? This is not you saying you owe this deductible. It's the insurance company saying they owe that deductible. That's their responsibility. It is unfortunate that it is left to the physician to manage collecting those payments, but here we are. So really important that patients understand what they're paying. Even I had one of our practices, I think it was last year, we created these little cards for them that said, hey, the patient deductible is going to be reset, and they wrote the reminder of what their deductible is on their like little card that they walked out the office with when the end of the year was coming. So that was another kind of nice idea to give patients. Obviously, you're going to want to verify insurance and eligibility. This is for many different reasons. You don't want to be seeing patients for free. And if you find out afterwards that the patient, didn't have active coverage, or you weren't in network and you didn't have them sign the forms necessary to share what that cost would be out of pocket, you may be in a situation where you're seeing those patients for free. So the other thing is many times when you do that eligibility verification, you can see deductibles and out-of-pocket maximums. You can see copays and all of this stuff. And yeah, it's not perfect. You're not going to know every single amount they're going to need to pay per CPT code. But in general, you should be able to have some idea of what you may be able to collect. And copays tend to be, easier to understand. Obviously, deductibles and out-of-pocket maximums are going to be there. Again, you may not know exactly what they need to pay, but you could come up with a strategy where you say, since your deductible reset, we're going to charge X amount as a patient responsibility. And you can go on the low end of that, maybe $50, $75, just something so that you can collect something. Again, copays tend to be more specific, but deductibles and what a patient may owe, you may not be able to get the exact amount, but something is better than nothing. The next thing is really wanting to implement kind of a pre-visit financial check before the patient is seen. And that's that opportunity where the patient comes and checks in. They're providing you, with updated address, insurance information, you're collecting copays, any outstanding balances, any estimated deductibles. All of those are going to get collected prior to the physician seeing the patient. And you've really got to train your front office on what they can say to this, right? So they should know how to pull these patient balances or be provided with that list, for the day ahead of time. They should know how to check to make sure that eligibility is still looking good, and obviously discuss any of these definitions around what these things that they may need to pay, and make sure that they understand or have a script. Scripts are really a good way that let the patients know, hey, we're going to be collecting this today. This is why, and hope you understand. Or even doing credit cards on file. Love credit card on file if you have the system in place to do it. Obviously, if you have technology or patient portals that can help send any of these messages ahead of time so that maybe even you can process those payments online before they get there, or let them know, hey, these are going to be the amounts that we're going to collect from you tomorrow. Please make sure you're prepared to do that. And we are going to be doing that prior to the patient seeing the physician. Obviously, really important to have all this kind of hardwired with your front desk. If you are needing support with that, we do have some eligibility training courses and other items within our school course for medical billing. It's a great tool for the office. You can head over to our website, again, go to resources and billing course, and you can head over to the platform called School, where we house those courses. And again, great thing for your front office staff. All right. So the question that kind of initially started this podcast topic was a link. Some physicians were confused about, can they collect deductibles for Medicare patients? And the link was actually specifically related to QMB patients. So these are the Qualified Medicare Beneficiary Program patients. So this is a specific category of Medicare patients. So yes, you can collect deductible payments from a traditional Medicare patient that is being seen. Obviously, some services are not going to cause an out-of-pocket or any patient responsibility regardless of deductible. So a lot of those preventative services are going to be in that situation where the patients aren't going to have to pay. However, for many different services, Medicare still has some patient responsibility. The exception to that is Qualified Medicare Beneficiary Program patients. So this is a federal Medicare savings program designed to help low-income individuals basically cover Medicare-related costs. And so these are going to cover things like Medicare Part A and Part B premiums. They're going to cover deductibles, co-insurance, and co-payments. So again, this is not your typical Medicare patient. This is a specific program for low-income individuals meeting very strict federal income and asset limits. Basically, in 2024, so this year, these limits were approximately just a little over $1,200 for individuals and a little under $1,700 a month for married couples. And so really this program eliminates all out-of-pocket max costs for Medicare-covered services. It protects against balance billing. So basically, you cannot bill these QMB patients for Medicare, deductibles, co-insurance, co-payments, basically anything. And so very specific situation where you're not going to be collecting that money from these patients. And again, this is not your, run-of-the-mill Medicare patient. This is a very specific type of Medicare patient. So you can verify the QMB status typically on your Medicare portals. And I know, when we talked with our clients this past month around eligibility challenges, there was a lot of discussion around Medicare and the fact that at the end of the day, you do need to go to these Medicare portals sometimes when you do have those complicated coordination of benefits or COB issues. So really important to have all of your front office staff have access to your Medicare portals with their own username and login so that they can verify these QMB statuses. You can also go to Medicaid databases or what's called an HETS to confirm a patient's QMB enrollment. So you're obviously going to be rechecking eligibility every time you see any patient, but also really specifically wanting to recheck eligibility as it is something that comes on annually for these patients. So you want to make sure that you never bill these patients for Medicare covered services. You're going to submit claims to Medicare, and then any cost sharing amounts will automatically route to Medicaid. And obviously you're going to be wanting to educate your front staff about these specific scenarios. Again, if you're looking on the Medicare portal, these programs will be highlighted so that you know that you're not going to be balance billing these patients and so forth. So really, really important that these patients don't have, again, those payments collected up front. Again, depending on, your patient population, this may be a very rare thing or something more common. Again, just depends on the patients that you serve. All right, so some Medicaid patients also do not have cost sharing responsibilities. So you're really going to want to verify that status through state Medicaid portals. And again, some of this is state specific. And so really important that you're looking at those portals, you're checking eligibility and understanding what type of insurance coverage these patients have. Now, there are some charity care or financial assistant patients that have basically an organization policy where they are going to have reduced or waived payment obligations, and hopefully the patients are telling you that up front. There's also, of course, veterans with VA coverage is another kind of special group. Certain VA covered services are not going to have cost sharing, or depending on the agreement between the VA and the provider, they may not have something that you're going to collect the patient from. So these are just kind of a couple different patient groups that you may not be collecting those patient responsibility from. But again, this is, for most offices, kind of a rare bucket. For the remaining of your patients, there are, going to be deductibles, going to be co-insurance, there's going to be co-pays. And so coming up with a plan to first identify, is the patient's insurance active? Are they eligible for services? Are you in network? Get those first. And then look, okay, is there a copay? That's going to be a specific number, $20, $30, $40 that you are going to collect depending on, the type of physician you are and the type of services you're providing. And then last is that deductible piece or co-insurance piece, which again should be outlined in the eligibility check. A lot of those practice management softwares, you do have to drill down. So it's not going to just pop up and say, hey, collect $50. You have to actually drill down into the details in order to see what payment may be something that you need to collect that day. Also, some states may not fully reimburse cost sharing for QMB patients. This is another important thing to understand. But despite this, federal law prohibits actually balance billing these patients. So again, kind of think of them in the Medicaid bucket. A lot of times patients won't really understand QMB. They may think they owe money for covered services. They may not really understand. So you may have to educate them for that. And again, hopefully, you have the right eligibility information from the Medicare portal in order to know this. There are varying state rules. So, of course, this podcast, as always, is for education purposes only. If you do have questions, certainly reach out and look at the eligibility for those patients or call the insurance company directly. So last but not least, right? So we started this podcast because guess what happens in January? Deductibles reset, making sure that you are tracking and trending your patient AR and that you have a robust plan for collecting patient payments year round, but especially as January is coming around. There are some nuances around what we discussed today with regards to the QMB program, and ensuring compliance with its regulations is going to protect both you and your patients. So make sure you know that if you do have kind of some of these patients where you're not going to collect the patient responsibility from, that you've taught your patients, you've talked to your staff, you've talked to them about not collecting those from those specific patients. Again, eligibility will give you the information you need in order to understand what you should be doing for these patients. As always, these things are very complicated. Having written policies and procedures, having checklists for this is really critical. We have sent out a few of these to our listserv, our contacts here over the last couple of months. We're going to be adding those to our resources tab on our website. But if you are looking to get those resources, shoot us an email at info at natrevmd.com. That's natrevmd.com. Or head over and subscribe to our blog or podcast to make sure you're on our email list. All right. Well, we will talk to you next week, and thanks so much for listening.